Hello everyone, this is Joshua Phillips for Living Reason. Today's video, science not solving ethics. So, making this video, there wasn't any particular thing I'm responding to. It occurred to me I wanted to have this video made discussing the weakness in the various, and I actually like them in certain respects, but this recent cultural trend of suggesting that science has simply solved the problems of ethical philosophy, that we don't need to worry about ethics because the answer is that science tells us what to do. Paradoxically, I think a lot of this line of thinking is coming from people who I'm glad are thinking we should look at problems empirically and we should try to solve them by checking how various approaches work and what actually contributes to human well-being. That's certainly better than quite a lot of alternatives, but I want to talk about some of the very significant drawbacks. So, number one, what science does extremely well is figure out the way in which things work, explain the interactions, causal relationships, gives us an understanding of the structure and behavior and makeup of things. Right? Science is extremely good at creating information about reality. And this is extremely valuable because information lets you make better decisions given a certain goal. Note that language, given a certain goal. Information makes you better at it. We'll come back to that. So science is an extremely powerful, we'll just use the word technology here. Science is extremely powerful technology. It does a lot. It actually enhances itself over time so it can become stronger. It is capable of doing immensely important and powerful work. But the solution to ethical problems and implicitly the political problems behind them or after them, the answer to dealing with those problems isn't just to, quote-unquote, let science figure out the answer. And you might ask, why can't we just leave it up to, broadly speaking, science and technology and policymakers to find the, quote-unquote, correct thing to do and do it? Well, the problem is not that you can't, at least in principle, we're not going to dig into like political bureaucracy and implementing. That's not what I'm talking about. In principle, you absolutely can, use science to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Right? If you're trying to build, if your goal in life is to build an extremely large pyramid in the desert, it's really useful to have scientists and engineers behind that. And more realistically, if you're trying to reduce poverty, if you're trying to solve, cure diseases, if you're trying to explore the universe, science is fantastic for that. It's way better than whatever else is going on in that. It's extremely valuable there. What you can't solve by empirical inquiry into how things work in the normal way we're thinking about it is that we can't answer a question like, what should the purpose, or I'm sorry, to what end should you individually act towards, right? What should you be trying to accomplish? That's not in the way people are thinking about it. That's not a scientific question, right? I can't go to a chemist or a physicist or even a psychologist and say, hey, I really want to know what I should be doing with my life. There's no amount of laboratory testing or study that's going to pop out that recommendation, right? There's no clear answer there. So that's the what science can do, but kind of limitation. And the reason I think this is important to talk about is that the science can solve ethics crowd, I think Sam Harris's moral landscape might be the most clearly well-known and read version of this, modern times, and it's the one I'll talk about the most. I think he makes the clearest argument. I think it's a very bad argument, but I think it's a clear argument as opposed to just an intuition claim. There's a very common unchecked premise in the science can solve ethics crowd, which is that it is taken for granted that the goal of your actions should be to accomplish some kind of, and it varies by individual here, some kind of the greater good that you're supposed to be achieving. In the particular case of Sam Harris's moral landscape, I understand he claims it's a bit different and it's a bit nuanced, but he is basically a utilitarian in the sense that he thinks total well-being of all conscious creatures should be the goal of our actions in the long run. Well, the problem is that's, I would say, that's obviously not a simple empirical premise, right? We didn't go out into the field one day with some microscopes and some chemical reagents and discover that we should be trying to accomplish the greatest amount of well-being for the total sum of conscious creatures, right? There was no... The unchecked premise is that this generally intuitive sense of the greater good, of some total well-being, of everything, quote-unquote, just working well, as it gets said occasionally, that is the correct foundation for ethics. And if you think that, then you do believe that science can, quote-unquote, solve ethics, because you think ethics is merely a question of bringing in empirical information to flesh out how should we accomplish our greater good thingy that we're working on. I do love the word thingy. I know. I'm going to add it to the dictionary one day. But if you start with that premise, which I think doesn't get properly investigated by the scientific solving of ethics crowd, then you do reasonably think it's just a set of scientific problems, right? If you stumble upon the fact that slavery still exists in the modern world, which is horrible, it doesn't even occur to you to question that, which I'm happy people don't think slavery is okay, but if you don't even question the justification for that belief, then you don't think there's anything to do but try to figure out how to solve it. So the good news is they're focused on solving bad things generally. So in this rate, that's fantastic. If somebody, via bad philosophy, they go out and they're working very hard to end slavery, I'm not going to try and derail them by pointing out that their premises are but they are wrong. And I think in a lot of other cases, this can lead to some very weird thinking where you assume that you're correct because intuitively you're correct about a lot of very much more universally agreed upon things. And then you don't question the foundation you're working from when discussing ethical philosophy or that. So to continue, right, the moral landscape claim is essentially that there's this greater good, which is the well-being of all conscious creatures. I'm not going to try and make some tricky claim that, we can't quantify well-being, which is a problem, but I don't... The biggest problem with the various science can solve ones, and this is the question to ask, is why should I have the same goal as you? Why should I accept your goals instead of that other guy over there's goals? You have the Sam Harris argument that there's this greater good we should be working for. And I think there's a very clear problem with it. If someone just walks up or asks or whatever and says, I I get your scientific idea that you want to work on, reducing suffering in the world, increasing well-being for everybody. I get what you're doing. A lot of what you're doing I'm on board with individually. But let's suppose, I face a trade-off between, maybe my family doing well versus the whole community, or me versus other people, or, maybe I just want to do something even though it's quote-unquote bad by your standards. Why should I go along with you? And I think it's been pretty clear, and I'll gladly take any challenge to this claim. I think it's very clear the science can solve ethics crowd doesn't have a good answer to that question, or that challenge of, why should I choose to cooperate in your project in totality, right? If we're both on board with something, well, then yeah, I'm already on board. But if I'm not interested in doing one of the things they're working on, well, what's their sort of ethical statement about why I should cooperate with them? I don't think they have one. I think it's actually pretty clear that in general, the response made here is some variation of, we'll pass laws to make you, which again is not arguing that I should get on board with the project. It's arguing that I should get on board with the project because you're making it better for me to cooperate than not, which is quite different than thinking I inherently should. So that's the main problem, as I see it. I don't think there's a great answer. I'm going to cut this video for now. I think I might talk about this more. I might restructure this a lot after I've watched it myself and try to see if I can essentialize my point better. I would sum it up as science is extremely powerful for working out how to accomplish the goals you have and how to pick short-term goals to accomplish longer-term goals. But the quote-unquote science solution to ethics does not address some of the fundamental problems, such as why I should choose to get on board with anyone's particular theory of what I should be doing. It doesn't solve what these, right and wrong language is talking about in this context. And it will fall apart when you find out that two people who want to, use science to solve ethics have fundamental disagreements about what the quote-unquote greater good is. So thank you for watching, everybody. I would absolutely love feedback on this video to hopefully help me record a more concise, focused version of it. I want to be able to address any concerns people have, any disagreements with my position. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and have a nice day.